Speaker of the House of Representatives, Abbas Tajuddin, has raised alarm over Nigeria's rising debt profile, warning that it has crossed the country's statutory threshold and now threatens fiscal sustainability. While Abbas warned about the nation's growing debt, which he said has risen to 149.39 trillion naira, that's about $97 billion in the first quarter of 2025, up from 121.7 trillion naira the previous year, the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, projected optimism and insisted that Nigeria's debt profile was becoming sustainable. Joining us on the show to discuss the rise in debt profile against the backdrop of President Tinubu's declaration that the FGA, federal government, has achieved its revenue target and won't need to borrow is Paul Alaje, Chief Economist, SPM Professionals. Good morning, Mr. Alaje. Always good to have you on the morning show.
Well, good morning, and thank you so very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for honoring our invitation. Well, this issue about
thank you, Doctor.
Debt has been in the news. Dino Melaye, Senator Dino Melaye, speaking on Rice TV yesterday, said, in fact, the way we are carrying on, it will get to a stage that the Nigerian government will start borrowing money from Money Point and OP. And he doesn't see what government is doing with the money, with the spread of hunger in the land. Now, this morning, we had also discussed the issue about what the Speaker of the House of Reps, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, reportedly said about borrowing, over 149 trillion. Some people even say it will get to 160 trillion. But the Speaker of the House, has tried to walk that back to say, oh, he was misrepresented. He wasn't complaining about borrowing. He was just talking about, the function of the legislature. Now, what are your thoughts about borrowing? Are we over borrowing? Because the president came and said, oh, in terms of revenue, we are doing very well, especially with non-oil exports. And then 2 days later, the same president was asking the National Assembly to approve $21 billion in terms of external borrowing for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. So there's a lot of confusion. What is certain? What do we know? You are the economist. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, good morning, Doctor, and thank you so very much for having me. So when we talk about debt or borrowing, there are some parameters that are where we measure sustainability. In macroeconomics, usually people use 1 or 2 parameters. But when it comes to applied economics, there are 3 solid parameters. The first one is the money you have borrowed, that's your debt to GDP. Nigeria has a law that says 40%. Before we rebase the economy, we have moved to 52%. We rebased the economy, and that took us to 39.4%. What does that mean? We are barely on the brink of 40% debt to GDP. The next one is revenue, debt service to revenue. Before now, we were on 98%. And now where we are now is close to 70%. In fact, some report says we are on 74%. But what is acceptable is 33%, which means we are doing more than double of what is allowable to be spent from our revenue to service debt. The third and the most important is what is the growth rate of debt and what is the growth rate of our economy. Our economy grew by arguably 4%. But when you look at how we have increased debt in the last 1 year, not my figures, but the figure published by the Debt Management Office is over 22%, about 22.8%. What is allowable is that we should be doing about a quarter of what we have borrowed. What does that mean? On the issue of debt to GDP, which is stock factor and is not flow variable, we seems to be around the corridor of what is accepted. But when it comes to revenue, the real money we generated from the economy to pay back the debt, it weighs so much on our revenue because it's common sense to say out of 100 kobo or 100 naira, you take out between 68 to 70 naira only to service debt, not to buy vehicles for legislature, as good as that may be or that may not be good at all, or to even finance education or health or whatever it is that we think is so important. Now we are taking that much. That's huge on our revenue. Now, the third part is that this debt collected is not impacting enough on our economy. If it impacts, we will see growth rate. We will see deployment of infrastructure beyond what we are seeing in Abuja and Lagos. You know, we will see it. It will be ubiquitous all over our nation. So now, if this debt grows, my worry and my concern is that this debt, before the next election, by May 2027, the numbers we are projecting is about 200 trillion naira. And when it gets to 300 trillion naira and revenue is not matching up, sadly, you might go back to 80 or 90% of debt. Remember that in 2022, I spoke on this particular show, and I said that by 2024, you might need all your revenue and more to service debt. Sadly, we got to 98% before some measures were taken to take us back. Do I think we may go back there even now? I think so. If and only if we don't, if and only if we continue the rate at which we are collecting debt. Now, we need to also compare local debt and foreign debt. Surprisingly, my thesis, when I took my second master's, it was on the impact of debt on the economy. So this is a topic I so much love. When you talk about debt, local debt, it has its own implication. You borrow from local banks, you raise bills, you raise bond, and you are able to borrow from the local economy so that government can perform or carry out its activity, after which government will refund the money back when revenue is made either through crude taxes or any other means. But this is what you have as the implication. When the rates are high, and by the way, you have very high rate now, because you can look at what NPR is saying, the investment in the economy will shrink. What does that mean? Banks will prefer to buy bonds. They will prefer to buy treasury bill from the public sector, in this case, government. When that is done, those who should have taken the money and put the economy, in fact, banks that should have given the money to businesses, they feel because it has some level of risk, but buying treasury bill and bond comes with near zero risk. That's almost, the risk is almost not in existence. So they will give the money to government to spend, hoping, again, the economic assumption that the economic theorists believe that when government gets the money, it will be invested in the economy. But is that what we see most of the time? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So when banks give this money, private sector have been crowded out. So the investment you should see for private sector to now mop up people that are unemployed, that will not be the case. So what will reign, on the other hand, will be poverty, will be hunger, will be deprivation. Everybody will now have to hope that government does it. The other one is public sector. When it comes to, foreign loan. Foreign loan has its own implication. It's good for nations whose currency does not get the value arbitrarily. But when you check, for most African countries, and I will use Nigeria because I'm in Nigeria, in the last 20 years, what was our exchange rate? 5 years ago, what was our exchange rate? In fact, 2 years ago, officially, it was less than 500. Today, it's about 1,500. That is 300% worse off where it was before. That is why we have to be wary of both. It's either it's losing the purchasing power of the public in the long run, or it's taking investment, if it's local, out of the economy. What should we therefore do? We must find alternative to ensure the economy become productive, the economy is able to carry, and we are able to break the cycle of poverty among our people.
Thank you so much. And I want to probe deeper, the alternatives. Because you talked about, the government will tell you they have no option but to keep borrowing because they need to fund certain infrastructure. So even though, like you highlighted, we haven't yet been able to see the benefit on, or the trickle, that trickling down to the lives or improvement of lives and livelihood for the Nigerian people. But for the sake of argument, they need to borrow because they need revenue to fund certain important projects and infrastructure. What are the alternatives available aside from borrowing, whether it be foreign or local borrowing?
Okay, so we first need to look at the revenue we have generated. Fantastic information, good news that the president mentioned, that we have generated in 2/3 of the time. Mark you, this was covered in August. August is 2/3 of the year. We still have 1/3, that is 4 months, September, October, November, December, that nothing has happened to. So if you have generated revenue worth that, to my mind, the remaining 1/3 of the year, we are able to cover what we want to borrow. Debt may not therefore be necessary. What it means is that the burden of service, because most debt comes with burden of service, we no longer be there. What does that mean? If we are prudent with what we have, and again, where do we spend the monies that we have borrowed? From all tiers of government, especially referring to executive and legislature. For those two arms of government,
Hello?
Mr. Alaje? Mr. Alaje, all right. Okay, so we'll be connected with him very shortly, and I really want him to break it down, because from the statement that was made, the president said we're in a good enough place revenue collection-wise that we won't need to borrow anymore. Perhaps clarifying that he meant foreign borrowing. So maybe we're on the path to recovery, despite what the Speaker of the House has said. So, Mr. Alaje, I know you're back now.
yes, I'm here. I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Sorry for the interruption. Please go ahead with your submission.
Okay, so what I was referring to is when you look at the debt service, and you want to know that the money that what are the alternatives that is available, so that we will not need to borrow because of the incidence of debt service, and also. So I said, first of all, the money we have collected, what are we doing with it? We need to put most of the monies that we have collected to proper use. And what must come first should be infrastructure. So for us not to borrow in the future, because there will always be argument. Since I've been around, I've always said argument of we are borrowing to fund infrastructure. Apart from what I've seen in Abuja and Lagos, and I must give credit to those two states and those that are in those states because of roads that I've seen and some aspect of rail. I must say that we need to devote more into what we will not need to come spend again. Two, there are revenues windows that are available that I think we need to maximize. And this revenue window does not mean we should tax the poor. It does not mean that we should collect revenue by all means for those who are already paying. I'm saying that there are some kind of revenues that are available to Nigeria, that we are not maximizing enough. And I only think that, as a matter of fact, we're going to look at how to optimize some of these revenue windows and collect them. Thirdly, I've also heard that, without borrowing, we cannot do anything. And I said, no. If we change our budget finance formula from 70-30 or 75-25, that is favoring consumption, and 25 or 30 favoring production or capital expenditure. If we switch it to 60-40 and capital expenditure takes 60 going forward, those who have no business or other means of income, honestly and sincerely, they have really no business being in government. If you want to be in government, you mustn't necessarily depend on the state to fund your expenditure. To my mind, and this is just my personal belief, I strongly believe that some of the monies we spend in running government is just too excessive. It's too much. I think we need to cut down on some of the monies that we spend to run government. Again, there are also some expenses, some things that we spend money on based on when you look at them in the budget. And if you pick some item out in the budget and you see the price that we want to buy those items, you wonder whether we are going to the same market. So prudence is very important. Allocating money to right thing is important. Identifying more revenue options is also important. And government, those that are the agencies that derive revenue for government, we also need to up our game to get it. That is the way we can reduce the burden of debt. If we don't, unfortunately, we will have to borrow more.
Okay, so my brother Paul Alaje, a couple of things. Number one, let's even get the numbers right. The budget is about 54.9 trillion. The revenue target is about 41 trillion. The deficit is about 13 trillion. Isn't it? As at where
Yes,
we are
correct.
with our collections now, we are just barely over 20 trillion. So we still need, say, close to about 21 trillion they're about to go. Is that it? Is that correct?
Well, that's what we have on record. But Mr. President shared new light. He said that his administration have collected all the revenue target. Revenue target is over 40 trillion, which means the administration might have an information that is yet to be in public domain. What that means, sir, could be that maybe that figure has not been published yet. Once it's published, and I said that when you look at it, two-thirds of the entire revenue, honestly, one-third of the entire revenue is less than what we will get in 4 quarters. What that means is, at the end of this year, would we say there will be no need for us to borrow money?
No. So that's why.
If we still borrow money, that's when we now need to question the presentation made by Mr. President.
No. That's why I broke the numbers in the analysis. You did not get where I was going. The budget is 54 trillion, 54.9. Deficit 13 trillion. Revenue target is 41 trillion. When the president said we've met revenue, he said non-oil. That's what I heard him say, in all fairness to him.
Yes.
But I keep hearing people in government spinning that we've met our total revenue. Is it that we've collected 41 trillion in this country as we speak now in revenue? That's one clarity I'm deliberately bringing forward. And yes, you spoke rightly. I can even tell the government some of the revenue arms they can look. Debt capital is one. There are a lot of government land and properties that they are not using, that there are squatters living in them. There's debt capital. So they can hive off some of those debt capital. There are a lot of moribund wells that the government cannot even pay its counterpart funding, oil wells and the like, that the government is doing a JV in.
Yes.
In fact, Ilewa Adebayo said if you sell down all of that, you get about $50 billion to be able to inject. So that's another part to it. Maybe the government can explore all of that. But most importantly, number one, getting the record right, we settled that. Secondly, I think the most important part in this conversation, and since God knows when, we've always been saying we are borrowing to do infrastructure. But the government never gives us cost-benefit analysis of the monies borrowed. Can we talk about that? We are borrowing to do infrastructure. Look at the road. Look at the bridge. What's the cost-benefit analysis? Even the rail that we did, was it necessary? What's the cost-benefit analysis of the rail? What are the numbers? That's my question.
Okay, so I will tell you, fantastic question you asked. And I will tell you in relation to a few other countries I've been to and the benefit of debt. A number of people will say that, but America is borrowing. In fact, America borrowing is multiple of Nigeria borrowing. Excuse me, you are not America. Let us know something. In the 70s, America was a game changer. After dollar was taken off gold standard, America struck a deal that the rest of the world is still wondering what is happening. When America made the Arabia leaders and said all crude in Saudi Arabia should be sold in the dollar and OPEC followed suit, not only did that stop with crude, it extended to gold, and today, America is that, dollar is that currency that the rest of the world is spending. The truth is, Nigerian reserve is measured in the US, that of Ghana, and most part, or if not all Africa, even Europe that has euro, they still have components of the economy measured in the dollar. How can you, therefore, compare yourself with a country that can print our own debt and pay those that are owing them? Can we print naira and pay those? The economy will collapse if we try it. So you had better get serious about the issue of debt of our country. If not, we'll be comparing apple with banana. Now, to answer your question, definitely debt has cost. The cost of borrowing is interest. And I mentioned to you that interest already is gearing towards 70% of all revenue. Apart from that, when we borrow and becomes burden, the cost that is not seen in the generation unborn and even those that are here, while they need to service. Apart from that, government in the future may come and increase taxes and say, you know what, VAT is no longer good at 7%. State government have borrowed, federal government have borrowed. We need to increase VAT to 10%, in some cases to 15%. And trust me, there will always be example. Country is charging 5, 10, 15%. What we will not compare with that is what is minimum wage in those countries. So when we want to compare, it's better we put the pedestrian to me, we put the way on both sides to be even, to be balanced, so that we can have a critical conversation. Now, if we don't borrow for critical infrastructure, that in itself, and we don't have the money, and honestly we've searched, that in itself may be a concern. Now, what do countries borrow for? Or what should be ideal thing nations should borrow for? Number one will be infrastructure. And I want people to search this country out. I'm not telling you just theory, a country that I researched and I went to study myself physically. I'm talking of Poland, a country that is far less than our population. But you know, while Nigeria was dreaming to be a $1 trillion economy, this economy is already over 800, I think now over 900 $1 trillion economy, smaller population, somewhere in Europe, refused to spend euro in the country. They are spending their own. But what did they do? Rail system, rail connected to farm. As far as Gliwice, Katowice, not just in Warsaw, in the center of town. Countries have, in fact, local government has transport system. In Nigeria, we are still debating whether local government should have autonomy, whether Supreme Court passed judgment. Some local government chairmen I spoke to recently told me they still don't have the monies come to them directly. Meanwhile, local government should have transport system. Listen, now I see new energy. Doctors are saying they want to go on strike, and I will connect this to that. We've seen ASU also threatening to go on strike. We have seen Labour saying 70,000 naira is not enough. Well, myself and Mr. I'm sure you know we had that conversation whether 70,000 will be no, but that's another kettle of fish. But where do people spend their money? You see, we have not really asked. We always want to come back for more money. Look at this. A government that wants to help the people will focus on the following area. You spend your money to send your children to school. Can we have quality education that is affordable? You spend your money to go on transport system. Can we have strong public transport system so that it reduces part of your disposable income you spend on transport will reduce, which will be rail and which will be transport. Okay. Another one is to spend it on energy. Can we make it affordable for a strata of the population? And most importantly, health, especially public health. I'm with you, sir.
Okay. I don't know how much time we have, but you've been saying something controversial, which I would like you to clarify. In another forum, you were quoted as saying that the CBN governor saying inflation is going down and the monetary policy rate, may be reduced 27.5, percent at the last monetary policy committee meeting. Why do you say that? Many of your colleagues are saying, look, unless we bring the benchmark rate to single digits, businesses cannot do well. And they talk about productivity. But you are saying, no, keep that MPR at 27.5%. Cost of borrowing in the domestic market will keep going up. So what's your answer to the challenge of productivity? Because people say this is not a productive economy. For you to make it productive, you have to address the MPR. But you say no. So what exactly are you saying?
Thank you so much. I think those who quoted me must have quoted me out of context.
Oh, like Tajudi Abbas, Speaker of the House of Reps, public figures, commentators. Yes, they are always quoted out of context.
Yes. So here is it. When you look at the numbers that is published by the central bank, it's important for us to know that the inflation number we are seeing, they are called outliers. And let me use econometric term. They are called shocks. You cannot decide until you have seen that number goes 1 year. That is when you can compare year on year. I see most people saying our inflation is reducing. Not so. If I want to tell you the truth, you cannot say inflation is increasing or reducing. Why? Because you are comparing apple with banana. The year on year you are comparing, the base year are different. How do I say that I play football in Abuja Stadium and somebody scored in Lagos and I'm counting it for Abuja goal? In local parlance, that's Ojoro. It cannot be. So you cannot make a decision. I'm not saying keep the rates the same because it's confusing. You change the base year. After changing the base year, we now start seeing inflation jump from 34% to 24%. What happened? Is it that prices in the market went down? What happened? So if the goal of central bank is truly to combat inflation, wait, let's see when it becomes year on year, and when it got to 24%, what is the number saying? Compare the good price for price, year for year, debt to debt. That's number one. Number two, I have argued over and over again, and several interviews that point to this, even my articles have pointed to this. The reason why we have high inflation in Nigeria today, it is not because of monetary policy rate made by central bank. That's not the reason. Because it is not all inflation that responds to rate. It is inflation that money supply driven that responds to rate. Now, central bank will say, oh, we have high money supply, therefore let us increase rate. I ask, which money supply? Are we not expecting price to go up? What was the price of commodity 2 years ago and what is it today? So if price of commodity have increased, people will have money to spend. If not, then everybody will be stranded. So it is expected because of devaluation of currency. It is expected because economic atmosphere is relatively harsh. If not, if the numbers are not outliers, how come that the numbers are reducing and you check prices of house rent is increasing and you check prices of commodity is increasing? And people tell you that, oh, the price is increasing because of the economy. People are not even saying it's dollar that is causing it. So this is what I'm saying. To have a balanced economy, so if you want your numbers to adjust, can you watch it? So I am not against if you want to reduce the rate, but when you reduce the rate and inflation is going up, then you have price to deal with. That is why economic is holistic. Do not just look for a fast method, fix-it-all approach. Oh, maybe if you increase rate, inflation will come down. Now, is it the rate that reduces inflation or the adjustments that reduce inflation? You can ask Bureau of Statistics. It is when they reduce the number, we adjust the base. Before that time, inflation was going to 30%. And don't trust what I've told you. Check the numbers with the Bureau of Statistics and listen to the interview by the Statistician General. He said this number that we rebase has nothing to do with the price going in the market. You can replace interview. So when I made such comment, what I refer to is, can you balance your number with what the result is saying? If not, at best, we'll be committing own goal.
Thank you so much for that breakdown, Mr. Alaje, because when we don't have the right statistics or the numbers, then it's difficult for economic planning. When we talk about inflation has reduced significantly, then we are not telling ourselves the truth, and it will not all go well in the long run for the economy of Nigeria. So in your estimation, if you look at what the reality is saying, inflation has not gone down yet, despite the NPR,
In my explanation.
Yes.
In my explanation, the number published by Bureau of Statistics this time last year, they are using different base year parameter. This year, they are using different base year. So in econometrics, you cannot be comparing like that.
All right.
Because the base year are not the same.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much.
So if you now say that inflation has dropped, you are comparing two different things.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that submission. Very quickly, in summary of all the thoughts, excellent thoughts you've shared with us this morning. Revenue generation, $1 trillion economy by 2030. How optimistic are you about this in terms of this administration's ability to hit that target?
Only one way. The numbers cannot lie. We need to grow by 17% between now and 2033. If you don't have 17% GDP growth rate, the lower we grow, the more the percentage will go up. But the average growth rate should be 17%. If you grow steadily at 17%, you will get to $1 trillion economy. The hope that I thought we were going to have and get closer to it is when we rebase our economy. I had an interview that went viral when I said we are no longer the first in GDP, no longer the second, we are now number 4. My friends from all over asked questions, and I explained to them, here is it. Before we rebased, we were about $199 billion. Today, after rebasing, we did not have so much impact because it's barely $250 billion. This is why we should query questions and advice given to us by some international organization. I'm not saying those organizations are bad. I'm saying it is not all that they tell us that we take hook, line, and sinker. We must query and say, so what to this advice? What will it do to our economy? Will it help improve quality of our education? Will it help improve our infrastructure? Will it help improve revenue? And most importantly, will it help improve per capita income of our nation and all that are important, including power and electricity, that we know that a nation that does not have it is certainly not going anywhere. So for me, if I see 17% GDP growth rate, I tell you by 2033, Nigeria will get to $1 trillion economy, except and unless we debase the economy maybe 3 or 4 times more, then we can be looking at maybe 10% GDP growth rate. But as we speak, we are doing around 4% GDP growth rate. You know, you already have what my answer will be. That can we meet up? If we continue this and we even get to 5-7%, I doubt it very much. But to put context to it, United Arab Emirates in 2022 was behind Nigeria in GDP growth rate. Today, United Arab Emirates is either close to $500 billion or above $500 billion. Nigeria, my country, right? We were formerly $450 billion. Because of some decision, the numbers published by Bureau of Statistics is that we are now less than $300 billion. Like I said, when you took decision, including devaluing your currency, it might have positive implication, but the impact may be far-reaching, which have, of course, affected our GDP rating among Committee of Nations.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Paul Alaje. Always brilliant submission, and thank you so much for joining us today on the morning show.